Okay, it's my pleasure now to introduce our speaker, who is a friend and longtime associate, and who's going to be talking about visioning, okay, because we're going to be having a visioning process later. More on that later. But Terry is a religious science minister and co-founder with her husband Frank of Awakening Ways up in Atascadero, and very successful community up there. And they have decided that they're just going to relax and retire. So I called them up and said, hey, come on, people, come on. Spirit is calling you. And so I dragged them down here, and they said, all right, we'll do this. Anyway, here's Terry zumMallen, Reverend Terry zumMallen.
Namaste. Good morning. It's an honor and a privilege to be here this morning. Thank you for inviting me. Brian, yes, we've spent many hours with Brian, many fun hours with Brian, so it's wonderful to be here. And he's right. Frank and I are going to be doing something a little bit later after the gathering, and my job right now is to just kind of introduce this idea of visioning. You know, it's not vision like what you see with your eyes, but it is this concept of having visions, having a vision, and then a process to actually make that come about. So that's what we're going to be talking about this morning. And there's an anonymous quote that says, "We are limited not by our abilities, but by our vision." And Jonathan Swift says, "Vision is the art of seeing what is invisible to others." And isn't that true? Isn't that true, what a vision is? So we're here to talk about this idea and the different concepts of visioning. So let me tell you a story. Yeah, Frank is laughing because he knows what's coming, because this is a very personal and a very revealing story. So you know what? I don't know how to do it any differently. You know, I think about telling some beautiful story about somebody else, and then I think, you know, I'll just lay my dirty laundry out there and then just see what happens, see if anybody helps me pick it up and wash it. So long ago, we were fresh out of ministerial training, and we were on fire. You know, we were ready. We're anxious to find a church of our own. And, you know, were we ready for that? Well, I don't know, but we thought we were. You know, in our minds, we were ready to take on the world. And why? Because we had a plan. We had a plan, we had a vision, we had an idea, we had all of everything we needed to be successful. We knew this in our minds. We knew it. And so we heard about this small church up in the Santa Rosa area that was needing a minister, and we thought, well, we are just what those people need. We are just what they need to grow and expand and become successful. So we got in our cars and we headed on up to the Santa Rosa area. And we did our planning, right? We did a lot of planning, a lot of talking in the car, strategizing, visualizing, seeing it all come into being. And so it wasn't surprising to us that the people who at the small church, they offered us the ministry. Of course they did, because we saw it all in our minds. We had visualized it over and over and over again. So not surprising to us. Now, let's not talk about the fact that we could not find any place to live anywhere in the area. Let's not talk about the fact that the office space that this community had was shutting down, and they needed to find another one, and there were no office spaces available or affordable. And let's not talk about the fact that there were some major emotional issues going on in the community during this time. No, we don't have to worry about that. No. Red flags? No, we don't see any red flags. We are just charging ahead. We are charging ahead. Why? Because we had a plan. We had seen it all. And so, no worries, we had gotten so specific that we had, before we even saw it, we knew what we were going to do to change and make the Sunday service even better. We had great ideas for classes, ideas for how to grow the church, and then some really wonderful suggestions for how to best utilize this stellar group of practitioners that were there. We had it all lined up. Okay, let's fast forward 7 years. Okay, so although we had an amazing and dedicated group of people, the numbers of people that were there were the same number of people that were there when we got there 6 years before. We had lost some of the most beautiful practitioners that we had ever seen. They left. And although we were financially sound as a community, Frank and I could see that if they continued to pay us our salary, the church was going to end up, going into debt. They were going to end up going into the red. And so something had to happen. Something had to change, and we had to make decisions. Frank and I had to make decisions about what to do about this. Well, several years before, we had gone to a training with, it wasn't by him, but about him, a Michael Beckwith visioning process training. And we decided that, we had used it personally in the past, and we had used it in the community as well. But, you use these things and then, true confession, and then you forget about them and you don't practice what you preach. And then, there they are sitting, lying in wait and unused. And so we said, we need to do this. We need to start visioning again. And so Frank and I decided that we needed to go away on retreat, and we just needed to meditate, and we needed to vision for ourselves and practice this process. So Frank went to the Mercy Center, I stayed home, and basically that's all we were doing. I was meditating and visioning, and Frank was meditating and visioning. And near the end of the couple of day retreat that we had blocked out for ourselves, in the middle of the night, I know Frank had this amazing, crystal clear, powerful auditory message from God. And I had gotten this, have you ever just had this powerful rush of energy just hit you right in the chest, and you kind of have to catch your breath. And I'd got a message as well. So he called me from the Mercy Center, said he was on his way home, and he came home, he came through the door, and I said, well, did you get a message? And he said, oh yeah. One word: leave. Leave. And I laughed and I said, I got the same message. And so, in that moment, we knew for sure then that for the good of everyone, we needed to leave. We needed to go. We needed to just leave that place altogether. And so it's really still hard for me to talk about, because it was very hard and it was painful, because there was so much love in this place with the people who were there, and they hated to see us go, and we hated to go, and so many wonderful things had happened there. But the message was clear: time to leave. And so they were sad and we were sad, and we got in our car and took our U-Haul and drove back down the road to Atascadero. So we're coming back to Atascadero and sitting, by the time we got back home, you know how you're just kind of in a daze. When things like that happen, you're just rooted from something that's familiar and placed back into something that's unfamiliar. And we just kept looking at each other and said, how did this happen? We were so sure. We saw it all. How did this ever happen? Well, I got home and I felt depressed. I mean, I'm seriously, like, really depressed. Sometimes you have those periods, the dark, dark, dark night of the soul. And that was true for me. It was also true for Frank. And honestly, my mind was so foggy and hazy. All I could really do was pray and meditate and read and walk. That was it. Oh, eat and sleep, and Frank was doing the same thing. And we once again stopped and said, why don't we go back to this idea of visioning for ourselves? Let's see what happens when we just do that. We're home, we're miserable, we're sad. Let's start visioning. And so our vision question was this: what's next for us to do? What is next for us to do? Because we had no idea what we were going to do with our lives. We thought we did, but then we found out, no, we didn't. And so we started asking this question in our visioning process: what's next for us to do? And slowly for me, what I noticed is that I started getting these feelings in my meditations. It was just this deep, wide, full sense of love. And then along with that came this brilliant image of light. It was wonderful to experience that in my meditation. I told Frank about it, and we didn't really know what it meant. But the truth is that we lived on top of a hill in Atascadero, and from our house we could look down and we could see the Atascadero Lake. And this image of light that I had was this light shining on this Atascadero Lake, this brilliant light, and it was absolutely breathtaking. Interesting. Did not know what to do with that, didn't know what it meant, but there it was. And so what we did was we just kept visioning, and what we noticed was as we visioned along, we started feeling better and better. We didn't know what we were going to do, but we thought, why don't we just start our own ministry? So the two of us, because we weren't going to step back into church ministry again, that was like so scary that I couldn't even imagine that. But absolutely, we could speak at other people's churches. We could teach classes. We could do weddings. We could do memorial services, just a small little ministry. And we called it the Awakening Ways Ministries. Didn't know why we did it, but we did it. And in hindsight, what I know is that arose from the visioning process itself, that idea just appeared, and there it was. And then the strangest things started happening. Spiritual communities would call, one or both of us and say, would you like to come and speak? And we said, yes. We ran into a couple of people and they said, why don't you teach a class? Would you be willing to teach a class? And we said, absolutely, yes. So we did that up in our house. And this small little group said, well, we want more. We want another one. So we taught another one. And then we taught another one. And then they said, why don't you just open up your house and do Sunday service in your living room? Okay, now that's huge. But you know what? We said yes. We didn't even know why we were saying yes, right? It's like, what were we thinking? We said yes, we're good. We got to get these people in here. But we had this service in our living room. And what happened as a result was this was astounding. This community that's up in Atascadero, the Awakening Way spiritual community, was born from those little beginnings, you see, because what happened as we continued to vision is that door after door after door after door opened. And it was like within a month's time, we had a space to rent. Larger spaces kept opening up, and larger spaces still kept opening up. Places to teach classes opened up. Financial gifts just started pouring in from unknown places and from surprising places. And we just kept saying yes, and we just kept visioning. And where we ended up was, you won't be surprised, was the Atasco Lake Pavilion. And if you've ever been there, it's all this glass that opens up to the water, which of course is sparkling and reflecting the light so beautifully and so magnificently. It was the fulfillment of that visioning that had started some time ago. So these are two very different examples of personal visioning or personal visualizing and visioning itself. In the first example that I shared, over the top there, but not really, the first example was all about visualization, okay? Making pictures in our minds and making plans and strategies and working out all those little details and all those little steps that we saw happening. Now, there are lots of different ways that you can do visualizations. You can do brainstorming, you can do vision boards, you can do journaling, you can do dream work, all kinds of ways that you can do visualization work. And in all honesty, it's very, very powerful. A lot of wonderful things can happen as a result of visualizations. But the other way, the other process that we used, seemed to have no plan at all. Really, what was the criteria that we had? Well, we completely surrendered. We had given up. There was no place for us to go and nothing for us to do. What else can we possibly do to make things happen? Well, we couldn't make things happen, so we didn't. So there was no plan, and yet clearly something was happening, because from that second place where it seemed like we were doing nothing, everything happened. The most remarkable things happened. Well, there's a reason. The first one, really, it was all about us, wasn't it? It was all about ourselves, our vision, us, what we thought. There wasn't even any recognition that anybody else had any valuable input, really, because we already knew all of the things that we needed, everything that was necessary, everything that was good, everything that would be perfect for you. Don't you love it when people say, I know just the thing for you? As soon as I hear that, whoa, so the little hackles go up. So that's where we were. But on the second one, in the second example, we had literally been brought to our knees. There was no movement, no thinking. We were like vegetables, really, at that point. But we just kept practicing this idea of the vision process. Now, was there a master plan or a master vision for this thing that resulted in the spiritual community? Well, absolutely there was, but it absolutely was not our vision, and it wasn't our plan. It was God's vision and it was God's plan. And all we did was make ourselves available for that plan to show up in our lives. It was astounding. God's plan was so much finer and better than anything we ever could have imagined. So, I've talked about these two examples and you're saying, okay, well, yeah, that's great. But what does that have to do with me? Well, it has a lot to do with you, because the truth is we're all visionaries. We're all visionaries. And we all vision, notice that when we visioned, we had a question that we asked. Well, vision begins with a question, and everybody has questions. And questions arise from situations of stress, of frustration, of grief, of fear. You get yourself in states of turmoil and anxiety, and you need a solution. You need an answer to a question, but there is nothing happening. You're not getting anywhere. You're not getting any information, and you're just stuck. Now, we've all been there, but have you ever been in those places where you're stuck, where nothing is moving, where you feel like you're never going to get out of this place? It could be in a relationship, it could be a job situation, a life choice, whatever it is. And you so desperately need that answer, and it's not forthcoming. But then one moment, one day, something happens, and this image or this idea just drops into your mind. Well, if you have ever had that happen on whatever scale we're talking about, then you have had a vision experience, because that's what it is. That experience is the visioning experience. Now, you didn't really control it. You didn't make it happen. It happened. And this is how you made it happen. You probably got yourself into such a tizzy and such a state and so much anxiety that you absolutely came to a place where you could not think anymore. Been there? Like, I am totally fried. My brain is checked out. Nothing was happening in my mind. And in that moment of freedom, your mind became available for divine information and visions to drop in. Visions, we think, you think of visionaries, visionaries from the past. They all had these remarkable spiritual visionaries, like Hildegard and Meister Eckhart. They would see visions, to have divine visions and get messages from God. And you think, well, yeah, they sat around and meditated and, prayed and all of that. But visions don't have to come from that don't have to only come in that way. They can come, like I just said, in times of stress. It can come in times of contemplation, just sitting by the lake, sitting out in the rose garden. You can have something just appear to you. And all of us are capable of doing that. But what the visionaries were able to do was they were able to create a space where they could listen. They could listen, and they could listen because they got out and away from their thinking minds. Because when we have questions, the first place we go is to our thinking mind. Think. Try to figure it out. Visionaries know and get their information not from the planning, choice making, all of that part of the mind. It arises from someplace deeper within them. That place that we talk about here in New Thought Communities, that place deep within us. that we know about and that maybe we contact and are able to communicate and commune with during prayer and meditation. But it's the same with visioning. And how often do you feel that way when you're just sitting quietly and peacefully? So we are all visionaries. We're all visionaries. We are all capable of having visions. And in fact, each and every one of us have at some time or another had them. So when I think about visioning, I think about it this way. Here's my metaphor. Have you ever seen maybe a picture or a video or a movie, or maybe you've seen it personally, of fishermen down by the sea standing on the beach with those big nets that they have, and they cast their nets into the sea, and then the nets disappear under the waves, and then the fishermen stand on the shore and they just wait. They just wait. And then after a time, they gather their nets, they start pulling their nets in, not having any idea what gifts the sea has brought them in these nets. Visioning can be like that for us, because it's the same process as the fishermen. If we're in a place and we have a question, we can cast our question out into that divine consciousness and let those waves of divine consciousness take those questions, move with those questions. And what is our job? We just wait. We rest, and we trust that in God's time, in the perfect time, what we need will come to us. We don't know what it's going to be. We have no idea. But we can know that whatever it is that we need, whatever answer, whatever resource, whatever it is that we need will come to us. Because we have waited. And here's the thing. I know for us, having to wait is the hardest thing. But once you've practiced waiting, you just get excited about waiting. You just get excited about waiting. And what we really want to catch when we're waiting for these visions to arrive is, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting to bring into those nets? We're waiting for God's vision, right? We're waiting for that to come to us. And how great is it going to be when that vision, rather than our own vision, arrives in our minds and our hearts? This isn't just about churches, and it's not, about businesses or, any of those things. This is about personal things. This is about life itself and how this process works. It works for everything. Robert Browning said, "We must open out a way whence imprisoned splendor may escape." Imprisoned splendor. That's what's lying within us. That's what's waiting to be discovered in us. And all we have to do is prepare a way for that imprisoned splendor to come forth, to come forward, to come out, to be seen and to be experienced. We have our work to do, but we'll know what the next step is because we have asked. I saw this recently. It says, whenever you're thinking about the future, there's always my vision of the future. There's your vision of the future. There's our collective vision of the future. And then there's God's vision. And so we want to be more conscious, more aware, and more available to live in the place within ourselves where we're not trying to solve everything ourselves, but we are allowing God's vision to show itself in our lives. How magnificent would it be if that's how we lived? Think of all the glorious things that could happen. I won't tell you the story right now, but the house that we live in right now, I spoke here a year or so ago, and I was miserable. I was talking about this horrible house experience I had, but everything changed because I started visioning in a deeper way. And we managed to get this house, this tiny, sweet little house that never in a million years should we have gotten. But we did. Why? Because it was the perfect house for us, and it was God's vision for us to have that house. And here we sit, all because of visioning. Amazing. So Ernest Holmes said this, the title of my talk was Visioning, Expanding the Finite. And it came from a quote by Ernest Holmes, and he said, "We cannot contract the infinite, but we can expand the finite." Well, perfect. Of course we can't contract the infinite. It's the infinite. It is indivisible. It is unchangeable. But we're also finite, aren't we? And so we can expand ourselves, and we can move more towards that infinite. We can become larger. We can expand our perspective. We can grow our consciousness. We can have a bigger vision. We can do all of those things. So I thought that I would share just a couple of suggestions that we can do. And I know as soon as I start saying these, because I've been in New Thought too long to know that if you say something that people don't like, eyes roll, the eyes roll, because it's like, no, she's not telling us anything new. We knew that. We've always known that. I know that you've heard all of these things before, but it never hurts to take a fresh look at it and from a new perspective. So the first suggestion is take time each day to just sit and clear your mind, if only for a few moments. Now, you probably all do that, but the difference here is that you're going to consciously recognize and realize that when you do this, you are literally making yourselves available for the divine to move in and give you information. And you are opening to that splendor that lies within you. So it's a different perspective to have when you just sit quietly. I find that now that we're retired, I do a lot of that. But it's not just sitting, it's consciously focusing on the reason why I'm going into being quiet right now. Number 2 says, okay, now I'm expecting eyes here, but that's all right. When you're outside, look up. Okay, how vast is the sky? How broad is the horizon? I don't know about you, but I spend days, maybe weeks, looking this way, and this way. This way, watching where I put my feet, cleaning, driving my car. I'm looking out, and I may see a horizon out there when I'm in my car, but I'm in my car. This is an invitation to stretch your external vision along with your internal vision. Look up and just, stand like a child. And it's a wonder, it's an amazement, not only in the nighttime sky, but in the daytime sky as well. Practice it. And then the last suggestion is to just try out and explore this idea of the visioning process. What I've talked about here is just the smallest portion of the process itself. It's really like the pre-process, where you get yourself quiet, you get yourself empty, and you make yourself available. And then you invite that energy in. That's how we begin the process itself. And then the questions come along. So We can begin today to prepare to become the best visionaries we can be. We can become those, I want to say fishermen, but fisher people, fishermen and women, that will cast out into the infinite and become available for that vision and information to just drop right in easily and effortlessly. So Dr. Frank and I are going to be, are we meeting over here in the corner? Well, we're going to be, yeah, right in here, are going to be doing the full vision process for Unity 5 Cities, for you, for this community itself. And we're going to ask some questions because you are members of the community. You'll be asked some questions. And the idea today, and Frank will tell you this too, is to catch God's vision for this beautiful spiritual community. What's next? What's next for this community? What amazing things lie in store for Unity 5 Cities? Let's find out together. See you then. Namaste.